Anyway, let's get to the news.
Yes.
As you alluded to earlier, Donald Trump recently had an interview with Kristen Welker on she's the new host of Meet the Press. And we were talking about the old host of Meet the Press, and I couldn't remember his name. Tim Russert was the guy we were talking about, who was phenomenal. He was a great host of Meet the Press. He was one of the guys down the middle, no bullshit. It was just, but nowadays with somebody like Donald Trump, there's only a certain few people in my estimation or my view that can interview him, because for the most part, he's just going to run over you. He's going to say his bullshit. And it's very difficult to fact check him in real time. It's very difficult to, even if you did, to get a legitimate answer out of him. But the one time Kristen Welker did get an answer out of him seemed to me like a lot of people, experts, legal experts, and maybe his own attorneys were like, oh, God damn it, this is why we don't let him do this. You'll notice Donald Trump will never do a live interview. And this is, again, I agree with the fact in a sense that why would you go to these debates when you're so far ahead and do anything to trip you up? But there's also a part of me that also thinks that the attorneys are saying, you let Donald Trump loose in these things and he's going to say something incredibly crazy. And that's why, he claims that he would get on the stand and he would testify on his own behalf under the 4 different cases. But it is my view that in all 4 cases, if he took the stand, he would basically be Colonel Jessup in A Few Good Men, the you can't handle the truth guy who just will tell the truth on the stand because he can't handle that anybody is questioning him.
Right.
So I'm going to play a clip. And what are your thoughts, by the way, on, and I sent you an article earlier, and I don't want to read the whole article, even though the whole article is really good, but I'm going to read a good portion of it. It's difficult to figure out what we should be doing about interviewing people like Donald Trump and giving him credibility when he really deserves no credibility. I don't care the fact that he's so far ahead in the Republican primary. He has 91 felony counts against him. He was found guilty of sexually assaulting somebody. And we're still treating this guy like he's an equal to Joe Biden.
Right.
Do you feel weird about that? Do you feel any different? Do you feel like, okay, maybe he's still the Republican nominee, he should get a fair amount of coverage?
Right. I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to ask you, because the minute people heard on social media that Walker was going to do this interview, it was all of a sudden she was the worst person on the planet. Mm-hmm. She's a bad journalist. Why would MSNBC do like it was just all of that? And I'm just like, but she's a journalist. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? She has to how can you be a journalist and say, I am not going to interview Donald Trump?
I agree with you. But my question is, so this is the first time that she is the host on Meet the Press, which has been a kind of a stalwart of, political news every Sunday. It's the show to be on every Sunday.
Right.
And the first show is going to be, let's interview Donald Trump. First of all, why was it not Joe Biden, the president of the United States?
Joe Biden. They've been saying that. They did ask Joe Biden. Did
he refuse?
No, I don't know if they've gotten anything back, but they did say, when they talked about this interview, they did say, and I think she may have said it herself, that they have put out an invitation to Joe Biden to come on the show.
Okay.
They did do it. Several times they've said it. Yeah.
Then that part I miss, but the fact is that I wonder why it wouldn't be Joe Biden first, unless for some reason Joe Biden didn't get back to them on time,
Right.
and so they gave it to Donald Trump. But I still feel a little weird, and I guess I do understand he's the leading candidate for the Republican Party, but the fact that we're giving this guy a platform to lie. This is not like George Bush. It's not even like Ronald Reagan, who I thought was one of the most overrated presidents in the history of this country. It's not like any of the other
But they
Republican,
all lie. Like, so if we
but they don't have 91 counts of felony counts against them. And again, I might be wrong, and it's just my opinion. And I guess that the fact that at the end of the day, if you are the leading candidate,
I mean, to me, it's monumental, right? Like, we can't ignore that fact. It's monumental.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people on death row that get interviewed by journalists because you just want to know what's in their heads. So I don't know why, just from a journalism standpoint, not from our personal, this guy is the rise of democracy, just from journalistically, this is news. Trump is news, whether we like it or not. I'm not saying he's good news, but he is news, whether we like it or not. And I don't think it is a bad thing for us to be reminded about how fucking bad this guy is. And he shows us every time we see him, we're like, what the fuck? Like, it's just, and Jack Smith and everyone is happy to see this man on TV.
Well, you may be right about that, and I will say that there are a lot of times in my head that I feel like I'm an intelligent guy, and a lot of my thoughts are validated, but all of my thoughts sometimes have questions, and that's why I ask these questions, and I'm interested to see what other opinions are about this.
I'm a minority. I'm a minority of everyone. No one thinks he should be interviewed. I don't care.
Yeah, and again, we're swimming in waters that we've never swam in before, and it's a very confusing time. But I still feel like the fact that we are both siding this thing with somebody as dangerous as Donald Trump, is painful for me to take in. But anyway, I mean, we could talk about that all day, but I want to play the clip of Donald Trump first with Kristen Welker. And then what I want to do is, Lana, between you and I and anybody else that's watching, what would you say would be the number one concern about Joe Biden?
Oh, for other people, of course, his age.
And maybe that he might have some cognitive issues or stuff like that.
Yeah.
After this clip, I want to play the same cognitive issues that Donald Trump has. And I want to get your opinion on that. And I have a theory as to why maybe people look at Joe Biden differently when it comes to those issues and Donald Trump. But let's get to this clip first. This is Donald Trump with Kristen Welker with her debut on Meet the Press.
Administration and on your campaign told you that after you'd lost more than 60 legal challenges that it was over. Why did you ignore them and decide to listen to a new outside group?
Because I didn't respect them.
You'd hired
lawyers, sure, but that doesn't mean, you hire them. You never met these people. You get a recommendation. They turn out to be rhinos, or they turn out to be not so good.
I want to talk about this rhinos thing that they keep doing. So anybody that has any disagreement from the right are now labeled as rhinos, which means Republicans in name only is what that is. And that is just another word salad that they put together. So anybody that's watching this that is on Donald Trump's sides go, oh, that's why these attorneys are crazy, because they really are Republicans in name only. Even though in reality, if you're a professional attorney, I'm guessing that you're not going to take on Donald Trump as a client and then go against whatever it is he has to say. What again, this is
Right.
the kind of shit that people need
Right.
to point out when he says
Right.
dumb shit like this.
Right. Right.
Fuck. All right, here's more.
In many cases, I didn't respect him, but I did respect others. I respected many others that said the election was rigged.
You called some of your outside lawyers. You said they had crazy theories. Why were you listening to them? Were you listening to them because they were telling you what you wanted to hear?
You know who I listened to myself? I saw what happened. I watched that election, and I thought the election was over at 10 o'clock in the evening.
You were listening to your instincts.
My instincts are a big part of it. That's been the thing that's gotten me to where I am, my instincts. But I also listen to people. There are many lawyers. I could give you many books. There are books that are written on how the election was rigged. There are numerous books that were written on how the election was rigged.
Just to be clear, were you listening to your lawyer's advice or were you listening to your own instincts?
I was listening to different people, and when I added it all up, the election was rigged. There are books
Were you
that
calling
are
the
written.
shots, though?
In fact, Molly Hemingway wrote a great book.
Oh, were you calling?
This Molly Hemingway that he brings up, by the way,
Who's
she
Molly?
writes for the Federalist, which is a far right wing.
Okay.
So this is the credibility that he gives towards somebody
Right.
writing a great book about how the election was stolen. He also had mentioned at some point that in his trial that he's going to cite the movie 2000 Mules. Do you know what 2000
Yeah,
Mules is?
what's his face?
Dinesh D'Souza, who
Exact-
is a far right. I
And
mean, he
people-
makes Michael Moore's a left-wing guy, but he makes Michael Moore look like a centrist. So,
yeah.
So 2000 Mules is something that he cited. By the way, if anybody doesn't know 2000 Mules, it's a movie about how the election was stolen. It has been debunked by tens
Is it
of
even a movie or is it like some documentary?
It's a documentary movie.
Supposedly,
Yeah, kind of like when Michael
documentary.
Moore comes out with Fahrenheit
Gotcha.
9/11 or Bowling for Columbine. But it's one of these documentaries that's been debunked by many people and proven the falsities that have been said in this movie over and over and over again. But let's get back to what Donald Trump has to say to Kristen Welker, and we'll get back.
Calling the shots ultimately?
Excuse me. Molly Hemingway, who's highly respected and great, she wrote a book, a best-selling book called Rigged.
Were you calling the shots, though, Mr. President? Ultimately.
That wasn't bad.
As to whether or not I believed it was rigged, oh, sure. It was my decision, but I listened to some people. Some people said that. Like guys like Bill Barr, he was a stiff, but he wasn't there at the time. But he didn't do his job because he was afraid. You know what he was afraid of? He was afraid of being impeached. He was petrified to be impeached. And how do you not get impeached? Don't do anything.
What do you think?
I mean, I don't know what to say, but I felt like Kristen was trying to make him say that it was he and he alone that was calling the shots. Like she's stuck on that, and I swear that's why a lot of these journalists do this, just to lead him into saying something, one, that could get, go viral, two, that can be used in a court of law, because he's stupid and he will say something, and she's stuck with that. She went right back to that 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Were you calling the shot? Were you calling the shots?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I was.
And that's maybe going back to what you said, because again, I still have an issue. And you're right. I have to maybe settle my mind over this, but I almost don't. Hearing Donald Trump being interviewed to me anymore. How many more times do we have to hear what this fucking idiot has to say?
I know.
How many more times do we have to hear him lying over and over and over again,
right,
about different issues? But at the same time, like you said, these journalists kind of lead him maybe into a path where it's like, gosh, Jack Smith and Fonnie Willis and all these guys are like, please, just, maybe Jack Smith and Fonnie Willis are calling these journalists and going, hey, you might ask him these questions.
No, for real, they're watching, right?
Yeah.
Because they know he may say something. It when it's there, it's there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't think that it's necessarily a disservice because, in her mind and other journalists that we know Kristen Walker is not putting, she wants salaciousness over like that has never been her. If you followed her career path, it's just not who she is. Maybe in her head, she thought like, I can be the one that can break a story. I'm going to just, I'm going to go in. I'll call him fucking Mr. President like his people want me to do and make him feel comfortable so that he talks and runs diarrhea of the mouth. And he did.
Yeah. And maybe that enlightens me a little bit because I had the complete opposite opinion of it. I thought it was maybe a ratings grab, which I still think it is. I mean,
No,
it's a ratings grab.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. And I there's only a couple of people at this point anymore that I want to hear Donald Trump interviewed by.
Yeah.
Maybe a Mehdi Hassan or maybe
Right.
a Jon Stewart.
Right.
Outside of that, I mean, it's the same interview over and over and over again.
Right.
It's excuse me. And, like Mehdi Hassan did to Vivek Ramaswamy.
Right.
Oh, boy, by the way, I said I don't want to talk about Vivek Ramaswamy anymore, but I almost do because, Lana, you've got to say, we get so many views on any time we talk about this cat. And the comments we get, whew, people don't like us.
Okay.
But yeah, we don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Love the haters.
Me too. But I'm glad you said that. But let's get back to what we were talking about earlier about the difference between how they treat Joe Biden with maybe stumbling over a word or two and Donald Trump. I have 3 different clips I want to play of Donald Trump that just happened in the recent past here. This first one, I think this is the first one. Let me see. Yeah, I think this is where he gets very confused
Yay.
about who he ran against. It might not be. It might be the other one, but we'll get to that one if it's not.
Okay.
Who is totally corrupt and the worst president in the history of our country, who is cognitively impaired, in no condition to lead, and is now in charge of dealing with Russia.
Listen to the music.
And I need the podium to hold me up.
We would be in World War II very quickly if we're going to be relying on this.
The guy who is talking about somebody's mental acuity just said that we might be on the brink. Now, again,
was that his music? Was that at
that was 100% at the event because I'm going to play another clip and the same music is playing.
What the hell?
It's almost like a.
Oh, stop playing with me right now. He looked like he was about to pass out too.
Yeah, they're doing this thing now where it's as if you're watching a movie and the poignant scene is coming up and he's giving the speech of the poignant scene. It's so pathetic and so sad. But the guy who's talking about somebody's mental acuity in the same sentence said, we are on the brink. Now, I asked you this before, and I might be wrong because the education system in Florida might be different from where you are at. But we had a World War II already, correct?
I think so.
Okay. You and I agree on that?
Yeah.
Do you think that there would be anybody that would disagree that we've already had a World War II?
No, I think so, because I think Vietnam came after that, right? So
yeah.
I guess that wasn't really a war, but
it was, yeah. So World War II has already happened. So he's talking about somebody else's.
Well, I mean, didn't he say that there was a plane during like the Civil War or something?
He was talking about the airports.
Oh, right, the airports.
Yep. So this is clip number 2. This is the first one I was talking about. This is where Donald Trump gets very confused about who he beat and who he's running against.
Let's go.
Somebody's on his mind big time.
Joe Biden and the radical left thugs who have weaponized law enforcement to.
He got Biden right the first time. Okay.
Arrest their leading political opponent, and leading by a lot, including Obama. I'll tell you what, you take a look at Obama and take a look at some of the things that he's done. This is the same thing. The country was very divided. And we did with Obama. We won an election that everyone said couldn't be won. We beat Hillary Clinton. Now, you know, I used to call her.
They're like, yeah, you got it right. What the fuck?
So you screw up once and you're kind of like, oh, okay, because you've heard Joe Biden do that. Joe Biden every once in a while will say different country or something like that.
Right.
But he said Obama's name 3 fucking times.
Yeah, he did.
3 times he said Obama's name that he beat.
Obama. Beat Obama. Like, what?
That is a mental issue.
Yeah.
And the fact that we compare Biden's mental issue and Trump's mental issues is 2 different things. Actually, we look at Biden's mental issue, but we do not look as much at Trump's mental issue.
Right.
Really pisses me off. And I have a theory behind that, but I want to play one more clip where it appears as if he's in the middle of one of his speeches with the music in the background. You're going to hear the music again. And it appears to me as if he completely forgets what he was talking about. Some people said that he started to tear up. I promise you, Donald Trump is not a guy that starts getting choked up during a speech.
No way.
So take a look at this.
Build America into the greatest nation
Here comes the
in the history of the world.
Cue the music. Oh, look at those poor suckers in the corner.
What?
Did he choke up or did he forget what he was going to say?
I don't know what the fuck I'm looking at. I'm just so good. I'm like, how many? What?
Okay, let's go the opposite way. If that was the same exact clip with Joe Biden, what would everybody be saying?
Did he forget where he was?
100%.
Oh, I'm just like, he's just like,
Yep. Completely forgot
like
what he was
Mitch
going to say.
McConnell moment.
So, right, that's exactly right. And my theory is this. My theory is that when it happens to Joe Biden, you take it more seriously. When it happens to Donald Trump, they still look at him as a clown. So when it happens to him, it's a joke, it's funny, it's, or you don't even really pay attention to it. It's like, you remember when Tom Cruise lost his fucking mind and he started jumping on Oprah's couch and people were like, what the fuck is wrong with him? And they took it seriously because it was Tom Cruise. If Pauly Shore did the same thing, people wouldn't pay attention to it. Donald Trump is Pauly Shore and I actually like Pauly Shore. I like some of his movies, but he's a big goofball.
Yeah, I love
And the fact that we don't take Donald Trump's mental acuity as seriously as Joe Biden's, to me, not only is just mind-blowing, it's incredibly concerning, and it's very disappointing for me to hear anybody that will sit there and compare the two as if we are on the same page and we're like, which one should I vote for? This guy, that guy?
And
Does he have a point? Does he not have a point?
And it started years ago with Trump. We just laughed everything off. Like he was just a clown. Like he was just say things that we would just kind of ignore and just like, the coffee thing. What did he call it? Kafa or whatever.
Kafaffle?
Yeah.
The Kofefi thing.
Yeah.
And then he pretended like it was, he was kidding when he got called out on it.
Yeah. All of those things is just, it's not new for him.
No.
He had the doctor that was supposed to be his doctor that was a thyroid doctor, and he wrote out, I had his people write out that all of his labs came back positive.
So Ronnie Jackson, I think, Dr. Ronnie Jackson.
Yeah, like, right. But that other doctor, no, remember the doctor that
the guy
that,
who had the crazy beat, who looked like something from a 50s Doctor Who movie.
He's like, I'm a thyroid doctor. I don't know. They just came in and told me to write this stuff. And it's like, the stuff was dumb because you knew that Trump wrote it. It's like, labs are very, 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 very positive.
I don't know. This is it's getting really beyond crazy.
Yeah.
And like I said, there's I sent you the article earlier, and I want to go over some of that article. It's a long article, and I didn't want to read the whole thing, but I did highlight a lot of it because I think it's important, the coverage of the two different kinds of medias that we're seeing nowadays, and where they are totally just, it's not the same, but we are treating it like it's the same. And this is kind of like what I was telling you so many times, is that that's why I don't like the American media now. Right. Yes, the Kristen Welker, she's a journalist and she's trying her best. But I also heard her talking a little bit before that interview aired. She was just like, oh, he was talking about his policies. And so I was like, right, you're normalizing Donald Trump, and normalizing Donald Trump is going to fuck this country up.
How would you do that as a journalist that's supposed to be non-biased? How would you do that?
Well, you know what? I'm going to read you part of this article, and then we'll discuss it when it comes time, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.